Well, hi and welcome. This is Kevin Leipzig, host of Contractor TV. This channel is focused on providing content designed to help contractors start, grow, and manage their construction business here in California. We're sponsored by the Contractors Resource Center, which specializes in providing affordable insurance, specifically for newly licensed contractors in California, and California contractors with 2 to 50 employees. Today on Contractor TV, we're excited to have Carolyn Cromines. Carolyn is a true jack of all trades. In addition to being the owner and managing partner of Cromines Law Firm, Carolyn is also the co-founder of Morel Masonry Supply and the owner of the Subcontractor Institute, which is an online education platform for contractors. Carolyn is also the host of the education construction podcast, Quit Getting Screwed. Love that title. And she has published 2 Amazon best-selling books, Quit Getting Screwed, Understanding and Negotiating the Subcontract, and Quit Getting Stiffed, a Texas Contractor's Guide to Liens and Collections. Carolyn, welcome. Great to see you again. I appreciate you carving out time for our little mini series here on construction law in California. So welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad I could help.
Absolutely. So today we're going to jump into kind of the good, the bad, the ugly on contracts, right? So the whole goal of this this whole goal of this episode is to talk about contracts, what they are, why they are important, the different types of contracts, what you should look for in a contract. And then we'll talk briefly about, key terms such as termination and default. What do they mean and why are they important? So, Carolyn, I guess let's just jump in here. Let's talk about, especially in California, why are contracts important?
Well, I think just generally across the board, contracts are important because they do the job of managing expectations and kind of telling you what to do, right?
Sure.
And so I think there's contracts that out there in the world right now that are full of legalese and don't really do what they're supposed to do. And that's when we get in trouble, right? So yes, a contract needs to have some to cover your bases, to CYA, right? To cover your ass.
Right.
But it can be done in a way where everybody can understand it and then clearly explain what's expected. On both sides, from the customer and from your side, what do they expect from me and what does the customer expect from you? And the best way to do that is through a well-written contract.
Of course, there's different kinds of contracts, right? For contractors, it's either contract they have, maybe their attorney developed, or maybe, God forbid, they just Google searched. I hear that all the time and find a template to work with. And there's contracts that, especially more so on the commercial side, where the contract may be provided to the contractor. So can you speak to kind of both those types of contracts and maybe what to look for, and also share with us a little bit on, I do hear, again, because I work a lot with new contractors, the dangers and maybe even the pros, if there are any, on finding a template out there. So let's talk about that again, the 2 different types of contracts and the dangers of finding a generic template online that we think is going to work.
All right, so I would like to say mostly your residential guys are going to have their customer signing their contract. And this is where a template or something in writing is better than nothing. But for a reasonable rate, you can get a pretty decent contract drafted by a construction attorney. It's not out of the realm of possibilities. I would find one that's done by a construction attorney. And the main thing is, especially in California, if you're working with a homeowner, there are a whole list of requirements of things that have to be in that contract. If you want to make sure you're going to get paid at the other end of getting things done, and like you can't charge more than a certain percentage for a down payment, all of that's built into a California residential contract. So knowing that up front, especially if you're just starting out, and this is if you want to do the residential as your market, having that contract figured out. And some important terms there are like, the scope of work. What exactly are you doing? And what's not included from your expertise? What might people think are included but are really not? Payment terms. Let's be upfront about when we expect to be paid and how we're going to let the customer know when we're going to be paid. Another thing is change orders. people have a hard time understanding that, yes, you're the expert, but yet you can't see through walls or roofs, or that there might be things that you uncover, like if you're doing a remodel
Unplanned.
or something that you cannot see that would cost extra. And I find that it's best if you put it in the contract, hey, I'm really good at what I do, but I can't see everything in the future. And this is what's going to happen if I find something unexpected. So change orders is a big one.
Right.
And then, schedule. More than anything, whoever you want to work for wants to know when you're going to be done. So
Right. Right.
giving a realistic schedule and what that completion looks like. So that on the
Right.
residential side are kind of some of the huge things.
Okay. So payment terms, timeframes, change orders, and in California, I know, anything over $500, anything over that handyman criteria needs to have, according to the California State License Board, need to have a contract. So what about, so that's on the residential side, or the contractor side. What are some tips maybe you can share with us on the commercial side? So if a commercial contractor is given a contract and says, here's what you're going to adhere to, here's our expectations, what should the contractor look for in that contract? Any red flags or any language?
The best thing I can tell them is, I know especially in that side of the business, they're really afraid, or they're less likely to negotiate because they don't want to lose the work.
Right, you get intimidated, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here's what I could say is, usually the first contract they send over is like sticker price for a car, right? There's expected to be a negotiation. So that first contract that comes over, even if you don't want to change anything, have somebody tell you what you're agreeing to, have somebody interpret what it means, like the pay when paid clause, the change order. So you can evaluate the risk, right? I'm signing this contract. It means these things. I'm going to agree to these things. And then you can decide if it's worth it or not to you to negotiate. And then when I say negotiate, it's not red line and say, no, I'm not signing this. It's let's come
talk
up
about
with
this.
Let's come up with something in the middle, right? Like the big one that people get heard all the time on commercial contracts is the pay when paid clause, which basically,
and I'm sorry, what was that? The paid in lieu?
Pay when paid clause?
Pay when paid. Okay, that kind of makes sense, but what does that mean?
So it's if you're hired by a general contractor and the contract says that I, general contractor, don't have to pay you, subcontractor, until I'm paid by the owner.
I'm paid. Okay, the paid.
And there's lots of things in that relationship between the owner and the general that you're not in control of that ends up affecting your payment terms. So that's something because you could end up, having to float the whole contract amount if something goes wrong between the owner and the general. That's not your fault.
Right.
But you have that term in there. So that's just one of the ones, the more dangerous ones I see on the commercial side.
Okay, great tip. A couple of the terms I hear, my clients talk about too, and I think you've mentioned this in the past, the termination, what does termination mean and what does default mean? Can you talk a little bit about those two terms?
Yep, absolutely. So after you sign a contract, you're required to do everything in that contract. And if you fail to do one of those things, that's a default. So just, like if your contract requires daily reports and you're not submitting daily reports, then you're in default under that contract. And you could be in default and nobody says anything and it's not a big deal, or you can be in default and you get a text message that says, hey, you didn't turn in your daily reports, you need to turn those in. So that text message right there is a notice of default. It's just certain things that you're required to do under the contract that if you don't do, you're in default. And then there's, all kinds of things that can happen. If, eventually, if you don't cure default, that can lead to termination. And termination is when you're actually fired. And one of the big things I want to clean up for contractors is this idea is that if you're terminated, the only thing you can lose is the money that you're owed. It's not true. If whoever hired you has to pay more for your scope of work, whatever you were hired to do, than you agreed to do the work for, you're on the hook for that difference. So it's not just.
Okay. Didn't know that. So
yeah.
Let's talk real world examples. Or just a contractor goes to a residential home, says, I'm going to remodel your kitchen. And this happens all the time, right? Not necessarily in California, but they get halfway through the project, maybe 10% through the project, and you never hear from them again, right?
Yeah.
So they're essentially on the hook if you can find that contractor for finding, I guess they're on the hook legally, assuming they have a contract in place, right? Hopefully they do, for finding a replacement contractor to finish their job. Am I understanding that correctly?
Right. And so, yeah, the difference in the increase in price. So say you hired somebody to do your kitchen remodel and they said that they would do it for 20,000 and
Right.
everything you wanted, and they get halfway through it and then they walk, you don't hear from them anymore. And so you've had to find somebody else to replace them, and it costs you $5,000 more than if you would have went with the original guy. So now the original
Because
contractor
he
owes you
underbid it.
5,000. Yeah, exactly. And there's a whole plethora of situations where that happens.
Yeah.
Residential, I mean, can get bad, but commercial is where people can really get burned on this. If the project is going sideways and they, underbid it and they walk and they think, oh, I'm clean, they're just going to go finish it and I don't have to worry about it anymore. And it's not that way. So
Yeah.
just something to take note of.
It's the real world stuff, right? That's
exactly.
That's why we hopefully have the
What you
contract.
sign,
Right?
exactly what you have to have a good contract. What you sign will be used against you, or most definitely. So.
Perfect. Well, great tips. I do want to mention before I forget, we got originally connected through our Facebook group, the California Contractors group. So if you're watching this video for the first time and you're not part of that group and you'd like to join, it is a private group. I'm the administrator of that group, but we'd love to, build up that community. Right now, we have almost 5,000 contractors in that group. It's really designed for California contractors to collaborate together, to network together. It's also, over the last few months, it's become a great lead source. Homeowners are finding that group. If it's relevant, I'll allow them to post in the group, and it's a great, great supplemental way to pick up leads as well. Not necessarily important right now because everybody's so busy and swamped, but I did want to, mention California Contractors on the Facebook group. Carolyn, anything else we need to cover on contracts?
No, just an email, something in writing is better than no writing at all. I don't like the online Google me, find me a contract, but it's better than nothing. So
yeah, and just a short email. This is our understanding, kind of winging it, I guess, right? This is your completion date. This is how I expect to get paid. And it's better than nothing, right?
Exactly. Absolutely. Something in writing is better than nothing, because, you can get into the situation where, they said you agreed to remodel my whole kitchen for $10,000. You're like, no, I was going to replace the cabinets.
And you're going
right?
to do the bathroom while you're at it.
Exactly.
Right?
While you're at it too. It's just an open-ended agreement when you do it that way. So
yeah. Great tips. Thank you so much. So how can people get a hold of Cromines Law Firm if they have any questions? And I've confirmed earlier, and just to mention on this video, you do provide complimentary consultations, which is great. If contractors have a question about contracts or an existing contract or how to get a contract, you and your staff are available to kind of walk them through and consult with them on some guidelines. That's correct, yeah?
absolutely. Yeah. The Cromines Law Firm, we do contracts on a flat fee. So,
Okay.
if you need a residential contract specifically for California, we do it all on the flat fee, CrominesLawFirm.com. You can also message me on Facebook to answer questions or, situations you come across and you just need some ideas. If they're posted in the Facebook group, I'll try to come on and comment if I see something that I can be helpful on. Because it's a great resource.
Yeah, and if you're watching this video, feel free to make the comments in the video, subscribe to the channel, like it. We love those as well. But comments, we're seeing a lot of comments on these videos as well, and as Carolyn will certainly reply, or someone on our staff will reply to the questions. So, Carolyn, thanks again for the time. Look forward to knocking out a few more videos, specifically around California construction law. So enjoy the rest of the week, and thanks again for the time.
All right, thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.